All right. Airspace review, A through G, special use airspace, airways, jetways, T-routes, weather reporting, New York City VFR exclusions, DC ADAs, and approach procedures. He touches on just about all of these in here. Controller operational priority, pilot responsibilities, phraseology standardization, traffic flow and delay programs, non-towered operations. Also talks about lowering the standard takeoff minimums, alternate requirements in inoperative airport equipment. So in the AIM 3-1-1, two categories of airspace: regulatory, which is class A, B, C, D, and E, restrictive and prohibited areas; non-regulatory, MOAs, warning areas, alert areas, controlled firing areas. All airspace from 18,000 feet MSL up to and including flight level 600 within the 48 contiguous states, most of Alaska, and 12 nautical miles offshore. This is Class A airspace. IFR flight plan is required, and all aircraft have standard altimeter setting as well. Class B, surface up to and including 7,000 feet AGL or up to 12,500 feet AGL surrounding some of the busiest airports. Airspace tailored to contain all instrument procedures for the primary airport, examples of LaGuardia, Boston, and Atlanta. ATC clearance is required. Communications, radio, and Mode C is also required. It'd have VOR receiver required for IFR flying, and Mode C bail is the 30 nautical mile ring around the Class B airport, surface up to 10,000 feet. You're required to have an operative Mode C, obviously in the Mode C bail. Class B VFR services. Controllers provide sequencing and separation from VFR aircraft when operating in Class B. Separation minima: VFR aircraft from VFR to IFR aircraft, 19,000 pounds or less. It's going to give you target resolution. Targets on their scope cannot touch 500 feet vertically, and they're going to have visual separation. VFR aircraft from VFR to IFR aircraft, 19,000 pounds or greater, 1.5 miles laterally, 500 feet vertically, as well as requiring visual separation. Such surfaces do not relieve pilots of C and avoid maintaining VFR. Cleared into the Class Bravo airspace. Do we have to hear it? Radar identify and assigned and heading or altitude into Class B is considered a clearance. Example: departing Teterboro to Martha's Vineyard, VFR at the Alpine Tower. Goodspeed 1, New York approach under New York approach radar contact, maintain VFR at or above 5,500 upon reaching the Alpine Tower, resume O navigation. The clearance climbs you into the Bravo. Always verify clearance when there's any doubt. However, the frequency is busy and can't get a word in edgewise. Adhere to the assigned clearance, lest it be for safety. Alright, so basically what he's saying here is you don't have to actually physically hear cleared into the B. If they gave you this clearance, that is clearing you into the Bravo. But, like he says here, if you do have a doubt, ask, if you can. What's that?
Did they change the rule on that? It used to be where you had to hear the words, right? Okay.
I wish I knew, but we talked about it a little bit in the last class, and everybody kind of, nobody mentioned that they did change, that it wasn't, but
As the chief pilot, would you have to know this information? No, of course that doesn't apply until Monday.
it's true. Monday's still a couple days away, right? Class B phraseology continued. Goodspeed 1 cleared into the New York Class Bravo airspace, as opposed to Goodspeed 1 remain outside the New York Class Bravo airspace. Then he's got a picture of the cat that's in a bath. Can I please have Class B clearance? Dave Rohr. Alright, Class C airspace. Surface up to and including 4,000 feet AGL is tailored for the approaches of the primary airport. Radar and control tower services, communications, radio, and Mode C transponder, unless otherwise authorized. Two-way communications are required. Included is an uncharted 20 nautical mile outer area surrounding the charted Class C airspace. No required regulatory action for this portion. ATC must provide radar services and separation to VFR and IFR aircraft within that outer area. Class D, service up to and including 2,500 feet AGL. Communication radios are required unless otherwise authorized by ATC. Tower closed for the evening. You'll be turned into a Class E or G depending on the availability of weather reporting. Check your AFD. Class E airspace. Controlled airspace that is not A, B, C, or D generally extends up to 18,000 feet MSL and above flight level 600. This includes surface areas around uncontrolled airfields to protect instrument approaches, extensions to Class B, C, or D airspace to contain approaches, transition areas beginning at 700 or 1,200 feet AGL, en route areas that are not considered airways, and also airways. Unless otherwise charted, it begins at 14,500 feet MSL to, but not including 18,000 feet MSL. OpSpecs C077 requires turbojet operations to maintain within Class B, C, or D airspace, or E within 35 nautical miles of destination. Class G, basically anything that's not A, B, C, D, or E, uncontrolled airspace. May not operate VFR with ceilings less than 1,000 feet or flight visibility of at least 2 nautical miles, statute miles. VFR weather requirements, you see Class A airspace, visibility and distance from clouds does not apply. Class B is 3 miles clear of clouds. C, 3 miles, buck 25 rule, 500, 100, 1,000, 2,000. Class D, 3 miles, buck 25 as well. E, less than 10,000, 3 statute miles, 500, 1,000, and 2,000 from clouds, and then at or above 10,000, it's 5 miles, and then 1,000, 1,000, and 1 mile. Speed restrictions. Class B, 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Beneath the Class B is 200 knots unless you're in a VFR corridor, like the Hudson corridor. Procedure turn, 200 knots, Class C or D, 200 knots below 2,500 feet AGL within 4 nautical miles of the airport. Class E or G within the pattern, 200 knots. So here's a good one right here. So ATC may not authorize you to break these speed restrictions. Maintain best forward speed is not authorization to break these speed restrictions. So if you're going to the Alpine Tower in the PC-12, if they say best forward, you still can't go over 200 knots. Special use airspace. So prohibited areas. The flight of aircraft is completely restricted. It's a prohibited area. Restricted area, its flight is not entirely restricted. Warning areas, non-restricted but may be hazardous to aircraft, aka Navy is launching missiles, that stuff. MOAs, non-restricted but pilots should use caution for airplanes doing cooler stuff than you are. Check NOTAMs for updates on these airspaces. Check your charts for airspace that may impede your flight. Airways, RNAV, and jet routes. So Victor routes, 1,200 feet AGL up to but not including 18,000 feet MSL. Standards 8 miles wide. RNAV routes or T routes, 1,200 feet AGL up to but not including 18,000 MSL. Q routes is 18,000 up to and including flight level 450. And jet routes is 180 up to 450. A couple differences between ATIS, AWOS, and ASOS. So ATIS, Automatic Terminal Information Service, continuous broadcast of recorded non-controlled information to improve controller effectiveness and relieve frequency congestion. Updated top of the hour unless otherwise stated as a special. AWOS is Automated Weather Observing System. Minute by minute weather updates. A01 station means that there is a precipitation center. A01 is without precipitation. A02 is with precipitation. Sensors. And then ASOS is the Automated Surface Observation System. More complex than AWOS. ASOS stations are used to generate forecasts. Both ASOS and AWOS stations will not include the word auto in their broadcast. Alright, so New York City River exclusions. You must have a current New York terminal area chart. Airspeed restrictions to 140 knots in both exclusions. Taxi recog lights must be on. The Hudson River CTAF is 2305, so if you're actually doing the transition, 2305. Transient operations, 1,000 feet MSL up to, but not including 1,300 feet MSL. I believe this last portion here is more for the East River when you're talking to Newark and LaGuardia Tower.
So, in your prior example, right, you going to the Alpine Towers and the Paladas,
Yeah.
fast forward speed.
Yeah.
Technically, for portions of it, you're in the exclusion zone, right?
Transition doesn't count.
Okay.
It's only when you're actually in the corridor that it does.
Wait, you're talking about the 140 knots?
Yeah.
So when we cross that airspace,
North of the tower.
we can go north of
South
the
of the
tower
tower.
at 200 knots, but if you go south of the tower, you're supposed to slow to 140 anyway to run.
If you're south of the tower, if you're transitioning. If you transition, I don't know. Do you have to be at 140 knots if you're just transitioning
That's the way I always read it.
south of the tower? I think there's actually a plate here. A second. Yep. Transition operation 1,000. 140 knots sounds good.
Just go north of the tower.
What's that? Just go north of the tower. Alright, so Washington ATIS. So the requirements for this ATIS is a two-way radio, operative mode C transponder. You have to be on a flight plan, whether it's IFR or VFR DC ATIS flight plan, which will be given a discrete beacon code. You have to be in communications with ATC. VFR speed restrictions are 180 knots inside the ATIS. And max of 230 knots, 30 to 60 DME from the DCA VORTAC. Always file IFR if you're concerned. Alright. Biggest thing with that too is that you do have all these gates as well, so you're always going to come over one of these gates, both either inbound or outbound. Highly recommending just filing IFR.
We'll just you don't actually have to fly over those. You just have to be in that general vicinity.
Yeah, I think it's within certain miles of the gates, right?
Basically, you pull out of your butt. If they don't like it, they switch you. I go in there with VFR all the time.
Yeah.
They really don't care. As long as they have UNN5 in their system.
Yeah. Okay, so when you call flight service and you're going to go VFR, you just tell them that you want the VFR ATIS flight plan. When the president is doing his Martha's Vineyard gig, it's basically almost the same thing as well. Alright, so precision approach. Precision approaches will give you an electronic glide path. Discrete minimums, descent minimums expressed as decision height or decision altitude DHDA, where the pilot must descend to continue the approach or execute the mist. Minimum specified as visibility, however, ceiling must be considered. So as we know that usually always taking visibility into it, but you have to also consider the ceilings. Non-precision does not give you a glide slope. VOR, NDB, GPS with LNAV minimums. Descent down to a minimum descent altitude, MDA. where altitude is maintained until visual contact and normal descent to land can be made. Vertical descent angle profiles given by GPS approaches using LNAV mids are non-precision approaches. Alright. Approach procedures that provide vertical guidance, however, is not as accurate as a precision approach. Baro VNAV, LNAV VNAV, LPV mids on GPS approaches, MIMs expressed as decision heights. Controller response. If anybody can figure out, tell me what this picture means. That would be awesome. I can't figure it out. But controller responsibilities. So duty priority is separation of aircraft, issuing safety alerts. Example: traffic alert, low altitude alerts, and among all other duties. Operational priority: first come, first served basis, except for aircraft distress, lifeguards, presidential aircraft, various military. NOAA, law enforcement, FAA aircraft, and they always take IFR over VFR.
Can you go back to the previous slide just a second?
Good. Anybody get the picture?
I get it.
Dave just being funny?
It's a play off this meme that's on Reddit a lot.
Oh, okay.
A what is that?
Meme. A meme? Okay.
Pilot responsibilities. The PIC is directly responsible for and the final authority of the safe operation of the flight. Pilots may deviate from any rule of this part to meet the extent of any emergency. Maintain situational awareness. See and avoid in VFR conditions, even if on an IFR flight plan. If ATC gives you a clearance you cannot adhere to safely, it is your responsibility to deny it and request an amendment. Immediately, impress emergency to impress an imminent situation. Example: traffic alert, good speed 1, traffic 12 o'clock, 2 miles, advise you turn right immediately. Expedite, impress urgency to prevent an imminent situation. Example: good speed 1, expedite through 5,000 feet. Pilot's discretion. ATC authorizes clearance to descend or climb at the will of the pilot at any rate, may level off at any intermediate altitude as well. Pilot cannot return to a previous altitude. If climb descent clearance is not stated as pilot's discretion, the pilot shall climb descend promptly at optimum rate, commence a climb descent rate between 1,500 feet to 500 feet, 1,000 feet before the assigned altitude. I guess that means slowing it down to 500 feet, 1,000 feet before the assigned altitude. Level offs to adhere to speed reduction requirements are expected. Descending below 1,000 feet, descending below 2,500 feet, in proximity to Class C or D airspace. Descending below 10,000 feet, I'm sorry.
What was that about leveling off for speed reduction?
Level offs to adhere to speed reduction requirements are expected. So if you're descending below 10,000 feet, you're descending below 2,500 feet. So I think what that means is that if you need to slow to 250 knots, you can momentarily stop it at 10,000 feet until you get to 250 knots, then descend. And then vice versa with the 2,500. Or same thing with the 2,500. So all those times where you're sitting at idle, still trying to get 250 knots, blowing through 9,900.
Oh man.
Crossing restrictions. A pilot's discretion clearance. Upon receiving a crossing restriction, vectors away from the navigational fix deletes the altitude crossing restriction, and a descent climb clearance must be issued again. Example: good speed 157, cross Bronx at and maintain 11,000 feet. Followed by good speed 157, turn 20 degrees right, vectors in trail spacing, descend and maintain 11,000 feet. Alright, so now that crossing restriction has been deleted, and now you just do as they're told, as you're told. Speed adjustments. Assigned speeds are deleted upon acceptance of an approach clearance. Airspeed assignment must be restated if needed. Assigned airspeed should not be assigned inside the final approach fix or a 5 nautical mile final. ATC may ask you to maintain a speed inside the final approach fix or a 5 nautical mile final for sequencing. Airspeeds must be maintained plus or minus 10 knots, and it's the pilot's responsibility to deny a speed restriction if unable to maintain the speed for safety. Alright. Or if they give you a speed that's faster than the aircraft can go. ATC and U. So there's an overlap of responsibilities between ATC and pilots. The National Airspace System safety depends on both parties fulfilling their duties. Pilots and ATC make a good team. Aviation's excellent safety record is evidence of that. Pilots are at a much higher risk than ATC, so it's important that we hold up our end of the bargain. Communications. So keep communication simple. A basic controller has hundreds of tasks he can accomplish, but only one mouth, 2 ears, and one push-to-talk switch. Sequencing large volumes of traffic requires every second for it to work. So top of the afternoon to New York approach. Goodspeed 55 is checking in, descending VFR with let me see here, Kilo. All the controller is thinking about is how many radio calls he just missed. So to fix that, be New York approach, Goodspeed 55 VFR descent Kilo, field of sight. And then there's a picture of Mr. Bean pretending that he's a New York approach controller. Stay alert and listen carefully. Always verify clearances that may have been misunderstood. Keep cool if the controller loses their temper. If unable to adhere to a clearance, when able, offer an alternative. Goodspeed 55 unable VFR on that heading, we would need 30 degrees right, is usually followed by approved as requested. Alright. Traffic flow and delay programs. Say thunderstorms roll over New York City on July 4th weekend. Classic. Traffic management systems, TMU at centers may initiate ground stops, severe weather avoidance programs. These programs, during the ATIS severe weather avoidance plan, in effect, contact clearance 10 minutes prior to engine start. SWAP programs allow ATC to properly sequence and meter traffic when capacity may be lower due to inclement weather. Guess where this was taken? Anybody know where that is? Jet Aviation at Teterboro. Stacking them in. Non-towered airport operations. FAA tower closures and reduced working hours on many towers. No substitute for our alertness while in the vicinity of an airport. It's essential that pilots be alert and exchange traffic information when operating without a air traffic control tower. Recommended CTAF broadcast procedures. So, if you're outbound VFR, before taxi, enter a runway, vacating a runway, departing a runway. If you're inbound VFR, 10 miles out, on the downwind, base, final, and when you're exiting the runway. IFR, departing on the final approach fix. Departing the final approach fix. I'm at fault for this, so any traffic in the pattern, please advise, is not advised as a CTAF call. 2 aircraft approaching an airport for landing. The pilot of the lower altitude has the right of way. However, the pilot at the lower altitude may not use this rule to cut off an aircraft on final approach. All turns are left patterns unless otherwise stated in the AFD. I don't think we need to go over traffic pattern stuff, do we? Clear and concise with aircraft's location and pilot's intentions. Restate the airport name at the end of the radio call. For an example, Fisher's Island traffic, Pilatus 5 November X-ray, 10 miles west, will enter the 45 left downwind, runway 14, Fisher's Island. Montauk traffic, red and white caravan departing runway 6 eastbound, departure Montauk. Why is it important to say the airport name again at the end of it?
Multiple airports use the same frequency.
Okay, multiple airports use the same frequency. What else?
Somebody just tuned it in.
Okay. A lot of people are real quick to start talking on the radio too, so when you press the button, you might have dropped off the whole first half of saying Fishers or Montauk. So at the end of it, you say it again, you'll hopefully be able to get it in there at least once. Alright, so IFR procedures at non-tower airports. When you're conducting approaches, practice, or actual, highly recommend to make a mix of both VFR and IFR radio calls. Student pilots, private pilots, pilots not familiar with the airport may not know where fix is or what IFR procedures are. Oxford traffic plus 8 Tango Whiskey on the ILS 5 mile final, runway 36 at 2,000 feet Oxford. So that's just an example of mixing both IFR calls and VFR calls. Lower the standard takeoff operations. So runway visual range, RVR, distance over which a pilot of an aircraft on the center line of the runway can see the runway surface markings delineating the runway or identifying the center line. 1800 RVR is about a quarter mile, 24 is about a half, 4,000 3/4, 6,000 is 1 mile. When available for a particular runway, RVR shall be used for all takeoff operations on that runway. Alright, standard takeoff minimums per Part 135. 2 engines or less, there's 1 statute mile or RVR 5,000 feet. That should actually just say more than 2 engines. Half a mile RVR 2,400 feet. If a takeoff minimum is published as greater than standard, that minimum is controlling. Look for the black T on the government charts or look at the airport chart on jet plates. RVR is controlling, so RVR is ruling. Ground spec C057, we are authorized to use the lowest Category 1 approach minimum for that airport to establish our takeoff minimums, regardless of which airport is active. Jet crews are authorized even lower than takeoff minimum and op specs C079. Alright, so it looks like he came up with an example here. He has takeoff minimums and obstacle departure procedures, as well as a METAR. So Nantucket METAR 050 at 12, half mile vertical visibility, 100 plus 2 on temperature and dew point. RVR runway 6 is 2,000 feet. Alright, so there's our takeoff minima. Here is our approach plate. So we have ILS runway 6. You see it's 239 to 4,000 RVR. You have ILS runway 24, which is 248 and 1,800 RVR. Alright, so that's the lower. So can you go? Can you depart?
Yes.
Yes. This is going to be a real tough one for you Nantucket guys. Alright? So you can depart. Yes. But what do we need to have? Take it off. Why do we need to take off alternate?
We can't go back.
Okay. Because you're departing runway 6 and you're using runway 24's minimum. Okay. Takeoff alternate. Do not depart under IFR from an airport where weather conditions are at or above takeoff minimums but are below authorized IFR landing minimums for the runway you are departing from, unless there is an alternate airport within 1 hour flying time at normal cruising speed in still air of the airport of departure. Since we're departing runway 6, RVR required is 4,000, and using the ILS runway 24, RVR is required 1,800. You may use standard alternate minimums in selecting your departure alternate. Pretty much means if you have no way of getting back into your departure airport using the active approach, you must find an airport that is suitable to do so within 1 hour's flying time. The certificate holder shall not use any instrument flight rule, so any IFR Category 1 landing minimum lower than that prescribed by the applicable published instrument approach procedure. The IFR landing minimum prescribed in this paragraph are the lowest Category 1 minima authorized for use at any airport. Cat 1 precision approach procedures. The certificate holder shall not use an IFR landing minima for Cat 1 precision approach procedures lower than specified in Table 1. Reduced landing minima. The certificate holder is authorized precision Cat 1 landing minima as installed but inoperative touchdown zone lights and or center line of coordinates, that's center line lights? CL?
Looks like so.
Yeah. Requirements low as 18 RVR to approve runways without touchdown zone lights or center line lights, including the runway. So he has the ILS runway 24 up here, talking about that chart. When local altimeter settings are not received, use Hyannis altimeter settings. See, it bumps everything up. The other thing too, is showing that you have center line lights. How do you know if you have center line lights? See fancy little dots down the airport diagram there. Yeah.
Also calls it out in the words just below.
Yeah. Touchdown zone, center line lights for runway 24. Okay. Lower the standard takeoff operations alternates. First, we will need the ceiling will be at least 1,500 feet above the lowest circling approach MDA. Or, if a circling approach is not authorized for that airport, the ceiling must be at least 1,500 feet above the lowest published minimum or 2,000 feet AGL, whichever is higher. And visibility for that airport is forecast to be at least 3 miles or 2 miles more than the lower applicable visibility minimums, whichever is greater, for the approach procedure to be used at the destination airport. Remember, you must consider the forecast winds and other conditions at the airport. If the above conditions are not met, an alternate airport will need to be identified. Second, we do need to designate an airport as an alternate approach facility configuration, ceilings, visibility, all that stuff there. All right.